This experience was shared by Honey Lotus and it took place in northern Iraq. Before I go any further, I should describe myself a bit. I was born in the States, and I was raised around people who believe that we are not alone in this universe. I believe that children hold a certain type of intuition that many of us have either lost or chosen to ignore. When I was 17, we visited my father's family in a village in northern Iraq. It was during this visit that my view on life changed forever. In the summer of 2009, my family traveled to Iraq, quite a few years after the war was over. My father hadn't seen his side of the family in over 20 years and figured it was the perfect time for us to meet them and learn about our culture. Back in 2009, Iraq was just as terrible as you could imagine it'd be. Hot, no electricity, terror groups running around. But I was excited to explore such an ancient country. Dark history has always fascinated me. I remember this one night. It was very dark and calm outside. My entire family had walked 2 blocks down to visit my cousin at her house. I said I would meet them up because I was still getting ready. When I was done, I took 2 of my boy cousins with me. One was 4 years old. The other was barely 2, so I had to carry him. Exactly behind our place is an abandoned house the residents of the village refer to as the Jinn house. Jinn in Arabic means genie, but not the type that grants wishes. Jinns are almost always bad. They do terrible things to scare and harm people. The story behind this house is that multiple families had tried to move in there. But strange things would happen that would scare them, or a tragedy would occur that would force them to move out. The last tenants of the house suffered a lot. At first, it was just silly things like waking up with the TV upside down. Then, every morning most of their furniture would be outside of the house. The scariest part was that the youngest son of that family began sleepwalking to strange places and waking up there. My own cousins have seen this little boy walking to the graveyard and laying down on top of a grave. I heard from my grandmother who lives there that one night, this boy was sleepwalking, picked up a gun, and killed one of his sisters. The house caught on fire, and the family had to run out. The boy doesn't remember anything, and the remaining sister is now medically insane. Anyway, back to my story. I had to walk past this cursed house with the 2 boys with me because it was the only way I knew to get to my older cousin's house where my family was waiting for me. The 2-year-old was in my arms, and the 4-year-old was holding my left hand and walking with me. Walking past the Jinn house, which was on my left, I tried not to look at it because it really freaked me out. There were a bunch of broken TV sets all around the house, and all the windows were busted. But something made me look. On the roof of the house, I saw something that could only be explained as having the body of a donkey, but the way it was sitting looked exactly how a cat would sit. I stared at it for probably 10 seconds, when both of the little boys started to scream at the same time. The 2-year-old was facing behind me since I was holding him up on my chest, so there was no way he saw what I was seeing. I felt as though he sensed something was not right. The longer I looked at the thing, I began to notice that it had these eyes, that were not a color I've ever seen before. They weren't visible in the dark, but at the same time I saw right into them. It was like my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. It started to stand up. That's when I picked up the 4-year-old, who was screaming bloody murder, and ran as fast as I could away from that thing. I didn't tell any of my family about what happened because I didn't want to remember what I saw, or let my brain process the memory any more than I already had. I know what I saw, and I feel like it's something above human understanding. Whatever I saw that day, I know that in the moment of looking at the thing, it was shifting its form. It was not solid like you and I. Its shape was constantly changing, while remaining the same. It didn't have to show itself in its entire form for me to see what it was. I know it doesn't make any sense. But I truly believe I saw something that is not from this world, and that's why I had trouble understanding what I was seeing. It's been 6 years since then, and I ended up moving to Iraq the year after this happened. I've gone back to that house multiple times. I haven't seen the figure since that day, but I still feel a presence whenever I go there.